The morning sun cast long shadows across the quiet streets of Corsham as Queen Camilla stepped out of the royal car. Her black coat was perfectly pressed, and a small poppy pin gleamed on her lapel. The air was crisp with autumn's bite, and fallen leaves crunched softly under her feet as she walked toward the construction site that would soon become one of Britain's most important war memorials. Camilla had been planning this moment for months. The idea came to her during a visit to an elderly veteran's home in Bath. She had been listening to stories from World War II survivors when an old man named Harold spoke about his brother, who died in France. Harold's eyes filled with tears as he explained that his brother had no grave, no marker, no place for the family to visit, and, "Remember, Your Majesty," Harold had whispered, his voice shaking with emotion. "So many of our boys have no place to rest. No stone with their name. Their families have nowhere to go to say goodbye." That conversation stayed with Camilla for weeks. She could not sleep properly, thinking about all the young men and women who gave their lives but had no memorial to honor their sacrifice. She began researching and discovered that thousands of British servicemen and women from World War II were buried in unmarked graves or had no graves at all. Their names existed only in military records that few people ever saw. Camilla decided something had to be done. She spoke with historians, military experts, and families of fallen soldiers. Together, they developed a plan for a special memorial in Corsham, a town with deep military connections. The memorial would be different from others because it would include the names of every British service member who died in World War II, but had no proper grave or monument. The project took 2 years to plan and build. Camilla visited the site every month to check on progress. She met with the stonemasons who carved each name by hand. She spoke with the gardeners who planted special flowers that would bloom year-round. She even helped choose the design of the memorial wall, insisting that it should be beautiful but simple, so families could feel peaceful when they came to remember their loved ones. Local residents in Corsham were excited about the memorial. Many of them had family members who fought in the war. Mrs. Elizabeth Morris, who lived next to the memorial site, told reporters that her grandfather died in the Battle of Normandy, but was never found. She said having his name on the memorial wall would finally give her family a place to honor his memory. The memorial design was elegant and moving. A curved stone wall displayed thousands of names in alphabetical order. In the center stood a bronze statue of a young soldier looking toward the horizon, representing hope and remembrance. Around the statue, flower beds contained poppies, roses, and other flowers that held special meaning for military families. Camilla insisted that the last poppy placed on the memorial should mark the official completion of the project. She wanted this final touch to be meaningful and symbolic. The idea was that once the last poppy was in place, the memorial would be complete and ready to serve families for generations. As construction neared completion, Camilla received hundreds of letters from families across Britain. They thanked her for creating a place where they could finally honor relatives who died in the war. Many letters included photographs of young soldiers and heartbreaking stories of lives cut short. One letter came from Sarah Thompson in Scotland. She wrote about her Uncle James, who was only 19 when his plane was shot down over Germany. His body was never recovered, and for 78 years, the family had no place to visit and remember him. Sarah's letter included a faded photograph of James in his Royal Air Force uniform, smiling confidently at the camera. Another letter arrived from the Wilson family in Wales. They told Camilla about their son Robert, who died during the D-Day landings. Robert was 22 years old and engaged to be married. His fiancée waited for him to come home until she died at age 91, never marrying anyone else. The Wilson family said having Robert's name on the memorial would honor both his sacrifice and his fiancée's lifelong devotion. Reading these letters deeply affected Camilla. She realized that the memorial represented more than just names on stone. It represented decades of grief, love, and the need for families to have a place where they could feel connected to lost relatives. The night before the completion ceremony, Camilla walked through the finished memorial site alone. Security guards watched from a distance as she read names on the wall by flashlight. She stopped at each section, running her fingers over the carved letters. The weight of what these names represented filled her with both sadness and pride. She thought about her own family's military history. Her father, Major Bruce Shand, fought in World War II and was awarded the Military Cross for bravery. He rarely spoke about his war experiences, but Camilla remembered the sadness in his eyes whenever someone mentioned fallen comrades. She wished he could have seen the memorial and known that Britain would never forget its war heroes. The memorial wall contained 18,722 names. Each name represented a person with dreams, family, friends, and a future that was cut short by war. Camilla had read many of their stories during the memorial's planning phase. She learned about teachers who became pilots, farmers who joined the Navy, students who volunteered for dangerous missions behind enemy lines. One story that particularly moved her was about Margaret Williams, a 24-year-old nurse who died when her hospital ship was torpedoed in the Mediterranean. Margaret had written letters to her mother describing how she cared for wounded soldiers. Her last letter, sent just days before she died, said she was proud to serve her country and help save lives. Margaret's name would be prominently displayed on the memorial wall. As Camilla prepared for the ceremony, she thought about the symbolism of placing the last poppy. Poppies became associated with war remembrance after World War I, when they grew wild on former battlefields in France and Belgium. The bright red flowers blooming among the destruction became powerful symbols of hope, renewal, and remembrance of those who died for their country. The poppy Camilla would place was special. It was made from metal taken from a British tank that fought in the Battle of Normandy. The tank had been recovered from a French beach and carefully preserved by military historians. Using metal from this tank to create the memorial's final poppy created a direct connection between the memorial and the actual battlefield where many of the honored soldiers died. Local school children had been invited to attend the ceremony. Camilla believed it was important for young people to understand the sacrifices made for their freedom. Teachers had prepared lessons about World War II, helping children understand why the memorial was necessary and meaningful. 10-year-old Emma Davies from Corsham Primary School had written a poem about the memorial for the ceremony program. Her poem said, "Names upon the wall so tall, heroes who answered freedom's call. Though their voices we can't hear, in our hearts they're always near." Emma's grandmother had served as a radio operator during the war and survived, but many of her friends did not. Emma said she wrote the poem to honor all the brave people who died protecting Britain. The morning of the ceremony arrived gray and cloudy, but no rain fell. Camilla arrived early and spent time speaking with veterans, military families, and local residents who had gathered for the event. She listened carefully to their stories and thanked them for coming to honor the memorial. Colonel James Mitchell, a World War II veteran who was 98 years old, had traveled from London to attend the ceremony. He told Camilla that he lost his best friend during the Battle of Britain and had waited nearly 80 years for a proper place to remember him. Tears filled the old soldier's eyes as he explained how much the memorial meant to him. "Your Majesty," Colonel Mitchell said, his voice strong despite his age, "this memorial gives us what we've needed for so long. A place where our fallen comrades live on. Thank you for making this happen." The ceremony began with a military band playing hymns and patriotic songs. Representatives from all branches of the British military stood at attention in their dress uniforms. The sight was both impressive and moving, showing the continued strength of Britain's armed forces and their connection to those who served before them. Camilla spoke briefly to the gathered crowd, explaining why the memorial was important and thanking everyone who helped create it. She spoke simply and from the heart, avoiding fancy language that might distance her from the families present. "Today we complete something very special," Camilla said, her voice carrying clearly across the memorial grounds. "This place will ensure that brave men and women who gave everything for our freedom will never be forgotten. Their names will remain here forever, and their families will always have a place to remember and honor them. As she spoke, Camilla held the special metal poppy in her hands. The poppy caught the pale sunlight, gleaming against the dark stone of the memorial wall. Everyone present understood the significance of this moment. Once the poppy was placed, the memorial would be officially complete and ready to serve its sacred purpose. The crowd fell silent as Camilla approached the memorial wall. She walked slowly, reading names as she passed. Her face showed deep respect and understanding of what these names represented. This was not just a formal ceremony for her. It was a personal mission to honor people who deserved to be remembered. At the base of the memorial wall, a special holder had been prepared for the final poppy. The holder was made from the same stone as the wall and inscribed with words chosen by Camilla herself, in grateful remembrance of all who gave their tomorrow for our today. Camilla paused before placing the poppy, looking up at the thousands of names carved into the stone. In that moment, the memorial represented not just the completion of a construction project, but the fulfillment of a promise to never forget those who made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. The metal poppy fit perfectly into its stone holder. As Camilla stepped back, military trumpeters played the last post, the traditional tune used at military funerals and remembrance ceremonies. The haunting melody echoed across the memorial grounds and through the surrounding neighborhood. Local resident Mrs. Eleanor Shaw, whose brother died at the age of 20 during the war, wiped tears from her eyes as the ceremony concluded. She told a reporter that seeing her brother's name on the memorial wall made her feel like he was finally home. "He's been gone for 79 years, Mrs. Shaw said, her voice filled with emotion. "But now he has a place where we can visit him. The Queen has given us something precious beyond words." As people began to leave the ceremony, many stopped to search for specific names on the memorial wall. Families gathered around their relatives' names, some placing flowers, others simply standing in quiet reflection. The memorial was already fulfilling its purpose as a place of remembrance and healing. Camilla remained at the memorial for an additional hour after the formal ceremony ended. She spoke with individual families, listened to their stories, and thanked them for sharing their memories. Her genuine interest in each person's story showed why the memorial project had been so important to her personally. The completion of the Corsham Memorial represented more than just placing a final poppy. It marked the creation of a sacred space where thousands of families could finally find peace and connection with relatives lost in war. Through her dedication to this project, Camilla had created something that would serve generations of British families seeking to honor their war heroes. 3 weeks after the completion ceremony, Queen Camilla received the first official visitor log from the Corsham Memorial. The numbers surprised even her expectations. Over 1,500 people had visited in just 3 weeks, coming from all across Britain and several other countries to find names of relatives and pay their respects. The memorial had quickly become more than just a place to remember the dead. It was becoming a living center of historical education and family healing. Camilla decided to visit again, this time quietly and without media attention, to see how families were using the space she had helped create. On a Tuesday morning in late November, Camilla arrived at the memorial dressed in simple civilian clothes. She wore a warm navy coat and comfortable walking shoes, wanting to blend in with regular visitors. Her security team remained at a distance, allowing her to move freely through the memorial grounds and observe how people interacted with the space. The first thing Camilla noticed was how peaceful the memorial felt. Visitors spoke in quiet voices, and children instinctively understood the solemn nature of the place. Flowers had been placed throughout the memorial, some left by families, others planted by local volunteers who had adopted the memorial as their community responsibility. An elderly woman named Dorothy Fletcher sat on one of the memorial benches, staring at a name on the wall. Camilla approached carefully and asked if she could sit beside her. Dorothy looked up, surprised to see the Queen, but welcomed the company. "I'm looking at my husband's name," Dorothy explained, pointing to a section of the wall. "William Fletcher. He died when I was 22 years old, and we'd only been married 8 months. I've waited 76 years to have a place where I could sit and talk to him. Dorothy's story revealed the deep personal impact the memorial was having on individual lives. She told Camilla that she had remarried after the war and raised 3 children, but she never forgot William. She had saved his letters and photographs for decades, hoping someday there would be a proper place to honor his memory. "I bring his letters here and read them aloud," Dorothy said with tears in her eyes. "I know it might sound foolish, but it feels like he can finally hear me again. This place has given me peace I never thought I would find." Camilla assured Dorothy that reading letters aloud was not foolish at all. She explained that the memorial was designed specifically to give families a place where they could feel connected to lost relatives. Dorothy's use of the space showed that the memorial was fulfilling exactly the purpose Camilla had envisioned. As they talked, a young man approached the memorial wall, carrying a laptop computer and a folder full of papers. Camilla and Dorothy watched as he systematically photographed names on the wall and recorded their locations in his computer files. The young man introduced himself as David Chun, a university student studying military history. He explained that he was creating a digital database to help families locate names on the memorial more easily. His project would allow people to search online for specific names and receive detailed directions for finding them on the memorial wall. Many elderly visitors have trouble reading the names or walking the entire length of the wall, David explained to Camilla and Dorothy. "My database will help them find their relatives quickly and spend more time honoring them instead of searching." Camilla was impressed by David's initiative. She asked about his motivation for the project, and he revealed that his own great-grandfather had died in Burma during World War II. David had struggled to find information about his great-grandfather's service, and he wanted to help other families avoid similar difficulties. David's database project represented something Camilla had not anticipated when planning the memorial. Young people were finding ways to connect with the memorial and contribute to its mission. The memorial was inspiring new generations to learn about World War II history and honor the sacrifices of previous generations. Later that morning, Camilla observed a school group visiting the memorial with their teacher. The children, about 10 years old, carried notebooks and pencils. They were working on a history project about local connections to World War II. Mrs. Susan Palmer, the teacher, explained their assignment to Camilla. Each student had researched a family member or a local resident who served in World War II. They were finding those names on the memorial wall and writing essays about their service and sacrifice. One student, a boy named Thomas, had found his great-great-uncle's name on the wall. Thomas told Camilla that his relative had been a pilot who died when his plane crashed during a rescue mission. Thomas had learned that his great-great-uncle saved 3 other pilots before his own plane went down. "I never knew I had a hero in my family," Thomas said excitedly. "Now I want to learn more about the war and maybe become a pilot myself someday." The educational impact of the memorial pleased Camilla greatly. She had hoped the memorial would help young people understand their history, but seeing it happen in person was deeply satisfying. The memorial was creating connections between generations and inspiring young people to learn about courage and sacrifice. That afternoon, Camilla witnessed something that moved her profoundly. An elderly man arrived at the memorial in a wheelchair, pushed by a woman who appeared to be his daughter. The man carried a small British flag and a photograph in a frame. The daughter wheeled her father to a specific section of the memorial wall and helped him stand with support. The man saluted the wall and placed his flag and photograph at the base of the memorial. His daughter read a name aloud from the wall: Robert Davies, age 19. Camilla approached them and learned that the elderly man was George Davies, age 94. Robert Davies had been his younger brother. George had served in the same unit as Robert during the war and was present when Robert died during the liberation of a concentration camp in Germany. Robert died trying to save prisoners, George told Camilla, his voice weak but determined. He ran into a burning building to rescue people, and the roof collapsed on him. He saved 6 lives but lost his own. George explained that he had been trying to visit the memorial for weeks but had been too ill to travel. This was likely his last chance to honor his brother publicly. He had brought Robert's photograph and a flag that had flown over their family home since 1945. The photograph showed two young men in military uniforms, smiling at the camera. George pointed to the younger man and explained that Robert had been excited about coming home after the war. Robert had planned to marry his girlfriend and become a teacher. I promised him I would tell people about what he did, George said through tears. I've kept that promise for 78 years, and now his name will be here forever. Camilla spent an hour with George and his daughter, listening to stories about Robert and George's war experiences. George described how difficult it had been to return home without his brother and explained to their parents what had happened. The encounter with George Davies reinforced for Camilla why the memorial was so important. It provided not just a place for families to remember, but a permanent record of individual acts of courage and sacrifice that might otherwise be forgotten. As evening approached, Camilla noticed that the memorial never emptied completely. Even as some visitors left, others arrived. The memorial was becoming a place where people came not just for special occasions, but as part of their regular lives. She watched an older couple who came every Tuesday to tend flowers around the memorial. They had no family members listed on the wall, but they told Camilla they felt called to care for the space as a way of honoring all the fallen soldiers. These young people died for strangers, the woman explained. The least we can do is keep their memorial beautiful. A group of local teenagers had also adopted the memorial as a community service project. They came each weekend to clean the memorial grounds, remove litter, and help elderly visitors who had difficulty walking or reading names on the wall. Camilla spoke with several of these young volunteers and learned that caring for the memorial had changed their attitudes toward history and military service. Many of them were considering military careers or planning to study history in university. One teenager, Sarah Williams, told Camilla that working at the memorial had helped her understand the connection between past and present. Sarah said that before volunteering at the memorial, World War II had seemed like ancient history. Now she realized that the war had direct effects on her own life and community. My grandfather fought in that war, but he never talked about it, Sarah explained. Working here has helped me understand what he and his generation went through. It makes me appreciate what we have today. The memorial was creating exactly the kind of understanding and appreciation that Camilla had hoped for. It was bridging generational gaps and helping young people connect with their history in meaningful ways. As the sun set on her quiet visit to the memorial, Camilla reflected on how the space had evolved since its completion. The memorial had become more than a list of names on stone. It had become a living community center focused on remembrance, education, and healing. Families were finding peace and connection with lost relatives. Students were learning about courage and sacrifice. Volunteers were building community around shared values of respect and service. The memorial was fulfilling every goal Camilla had set when she first conceived the project. Before leaving, Camilla placed a small bouquet of flowers near the memorial's central statue. The flowers were from her own garden at Highgrove, and she had grown them specifically to honor the memorial and its mission. As she walked back to her car, Camilla encountered one more visitor who would stay in her memory. A young mother was teaching her 5-year-old daughter to place poppies near names on the memorial wall. "Why do we put flowers here?" the little girl asked her mother. "To say thank you to brave people who helped keep us safe," the mother replied. The child carefully placed her poppy near a name on the wall and said, "Thank you for keeping me safe." That simple exchange encapsulated everything the memorial represented. It was ensuring that gratitude and remembrance would pass from generation to generation, keeping alive the memory of those who had given everything for their country's freedom. Driving home through the dark countryside, Camilla felt deep satisfaction knowing that the memorial was serving its purpose beyond her highest expectations. The completion ceremony with the final poppy had been just the beginning. The real measure of success was how people used the memorial in their daily lives and how it was strengthening connections between past and present. The memorial had become a place where history lived, where families healed, and where young people learned the values that would guide them in building their own futures. Queen Camilla had created something that would serve Britain for generations, ensuring that the sacrifices of World War II would never be forgotten and always be honored with the dignity they deserved. 6 months after the memorial's completion, Queen Camilla received an invitation that surprised and delighted her. The mayor of Corsham, along with local veterans organizations, wanted to establish an annual remembrance festival centered around the memorial. They asked Camilla to serve as the festival's patron and help design its programs and activities. The idea excited Camilla because it represented exactly what she had hoped the memorial would inspire: ongoing community engagement with history and remembrance. She agreed immediately and began working with local organizers to create something meaningful and educational. The planning committee included representatives from schools, veterans groups, historical societies, and religious organizations. Camilla attended every planning meeting, contributing ideas and helping resolve disagreements about the festival's focus and activities. During one particularly productive meeting, Mrs. Janet Morrison, a retired school principal, suggested that the festival should include a program where elderly veterans could share their stories directly with young people. She believed that personal stories were more powerful than history books for helping children understand the reality of war. Camilla enthusiastically supported this idea and suggested expanding it to include families of fallen soldiers. Many relatives had preserved letters, photographs, and personal items that could help bring history to life for younger generations. The committee decided that the festival would take place annually in May, coinciding with the anniversary of Victory in Europe Day. The 3-day event would combine solemn remembrance ceremonies with educational activities and community celebrations. As planning progressed, word of the festival spread throughout Britain and even internationally. Camilla began receiving letters from veterans and military families asking to participate. Many people wanted to share stories or artifacts that had never been publicly displayed. One letter came from the Imperial War Museum in London. The museum's director offered to loan historical artifacts specifically for display at the Corsham Festival. The museum had preserved thousands of personal items from World War II soldiers, including letters, uniforms, medals, and weapons. Another letter arrived from a military historian in Canada who had researched British units that fought alongside Canadian forces. He offered to attend the festival and present his research about the shared sacrifices of British and Commonwealth soldiers. The international interest in the festival pleased Camilla because it showed how the memorial was connecting people across national boundaries. War had brought nations together to fight for freedom, and the memorial was continuing to unite people in remembrance and respect. Camilla decided to use the festival planning as an opportunity to expand the memorial's educational impact. She arranged for the construction of a small visitor center next to the memorial, where artifacts could be displayed year-round and educational programs could take place regularly. The visitor center would house a library of military records, photograph collections, and recorded interviews with veterans. Camilla envisioned it as a place where researchers, students, and families could come to learn about specific soldiers or military units. She also arranged for the installation of interactive displays that would allow visitors to search for names on the memorial wall using computer terminals. The displays would provide biographical information about soldiers when available, helping visitors understand the people behind the names. Local craftsmen volunteered to build furniture for the visitor center using wood from trees that grew on former battlefields. This created a direct physical connection between the center and the places where honored soldiers fought and died. As the first festival approached, Camilla visited Corsham more frequently to oversee final preparations. She was amazed by the community's enthusiasm and the amount of volunteer support the event had generated. Local restaurants offered to provide free meals for visiting veterans. Hotels provided discounted rooms for families traveling to the festival. Schools organized student performances and art displays related to World War II themes. The Corsham Women's Institute created a special exhibition of wartime recipes and cooking techniques, showing how families coped with food rationing during the war. They planned to serve period-appropriate meals to festival visitors, helping them understand the sacrifices made on the home front. Local musicians formed a community orchestra to perform music from the 1940s, including songs that were popular with soldiers during the war. They practiced for months to ensure their performances would honor the memory of those who loved these songs. 3 weeks before the festival, Camilla received a letter that moved her to tears. It came from a woman named Patricia Hoffman, whose father had died in the Pacific Theater fighting against Japan. Patricia had discovered that her father had written a detailed diary during his service, and she wanted to read excerpts of the festival. Patricia's letter included pages from her father's diary that described his thoughts about fighting for freedom and his hopes for returning home to start a family. The diary entries were deeply personal and revealing about the emotional experience of combat. Camilla immediately invited Patricia to be one of the festival's featured speakers. She arranged for Patricia to read from her father's diary during the main remembrance ceremony, giving thousands of people insight into the personal experience of war. Similar stories emerged as the festival date approached. A man in Scotland discovered a box of letters his grandfather had written, but never sent during the war. A woman in Wales found her aunt's wartime nursing journal, filled with accounts of caring for wounded soldiers. The festival was inspiring people throughout Britain to explore their family histories and share discoveries about relatives who had served in the war. Camilla realized that the memorial had become a catalyst for preserving and sharing personal histories that might otherwise have been lost forever. Local schools prepared extensively for the festival. Students researched soldiers from their community and created presentations about their service and sacrifice. Art classes produced paintings and sculptures inspired by wartime themes. Music classes learned to perform songs from the 1940s. One school, Corsham Primary, organized a project where each student adopted a name from the memorial wall. Students researched their adopted soldiers and wrote letters to them, expressing gratitude and describing how their sacrifices had made modern freedoms possible. 10-year-old Lucy Thompson adopted the name of Margaret Williams, the nurse who died when her hospital ship was torpedoed. Lucy spent weeks learning about nursing during wartime and wrote a letter thanking Margaret for her courage and compassion. "Dear Margaret," Lucy's letter began, "I know you can't read this, but I wanted to say thank you for being so brave. You saved soldiers even though you knew it was dangerous. I want to be a nurse like you when I grow up, and I promise to be as brave as you were." Camilla read Lucy's letter during a school visit and was moved by the child's sincere appreciation for Margaret's sacrifice. She arranged for Lucy to read her letter aloud during the festival's youth program, showing how the memorial was inspiring young people to consider careers in service to others. The week before the festival, veterans began arriving in Corsham. Many traveled from great distances, some making their first trips away from home in years. Local families opened their homes to house visiting veterans, creating opportunities for intergenerational conversations about military service. Camilla spent the pre-festival week meeting with arriving veterans and listening to their stories. Each conversation reinforced her understanding of why the memorial was so important and why the festival would help preserve these stories for future generations. She met Henry Collins, age 95, who had been a tank commander in North Africa. Henry brought photographs of his crew, most of whom died in battle. He wanted to tell festival visitors about the bravery of his fallen comrades and the brotherhood that developed among soldiers in combat. She also met Ruth Stevens, age 92, who had served as a radio operator in Britain during the war. Ruth had preserved her wartime radio equipment and wanted to demonstrate for festival visitors how military communications worked during the 1940s. Each veteran brought unique stories and perspective that would enrich the festival and help visitors understand different aspects of the war experience. Camilla was excited about the educational opportunities these personal accounts would provide. The festival's opening day arrived with perfect weather. bright sunshine and mild temperatures encouraged large crowds to attend the ceremony and explore the memorial grounds. Camilla arrived early and walked through the festival area, checking final preparations and greeting early visitors. The festival grounds have been transformed into an outdoor museum and educational center. Tents house displays of military artifacts, historical photographs, and personal items donated by veterans and their families. Food vendors offered both modern festival fare and historically accurate wartime meals. A main stage had been constructed near the memorial for speeches, musical performances, and dramatic presentations. Smaller stages throughout the grounds provided spaces for intimate storytelling sessions and educational presentations. Camilla began the opening ceremony by explaining why the festival was important and thanking everyone who had contributed to its success. She emphasized that the festival was not just about looking backward, but about understanding how past sacrifices had created present freedoms. The brave men and women we honor today gave their lives so that we could gather here in peace and freedom, Camilla told the assembled crowd. This festival ensures that their sacrifices will inspire new generations to value liberty and be willing to serve their communities and country. The ceremony included military honor guards, musical performances, and speeches by veterans and military historians. But the most powerful moments came when family members shared personal stories about relatives whose names appeared on the memorial wall. Patricia Hoffman's reading from her father's diary created a profound silence among festival attendees. Her father's words about missing home, worrying about his family, and hoping to survive the war resonated with people of all ages. "I wonder if anyone will remember us," Patricia read from her father's diary. "I hope someday people will understand that we didn't fight because we loved war, but because we loved peace and wanted to protect it for our children." After Patricia finished reading, many festival attendees approached the memorial wall to find specific names and pay their respects. The festival was creating the kind of personal connection with history that Camilla had hoped for when she first conceived the memorial project. Throughout the day, festival visitors participated in educational activities designed to help them understand different aspects of World War II. Military historians demonstrated weapons and equipment used during the war. Nurses showed medical techniques that saved soldiers' lives. Code breakers explained how intelligence work helped win the war. Children particularly enjoyed hands-on activities that let them experience aspects of wartime life. They learned to send messages using Morse code, practiced basic military drill movements, and helped prepare meals using wartime rationing restrictions. One of the most popular attractions was a tent where visitors could listen to recorded interviews with veterans. These interviews have been conducted over several months by local students and historians, preserving first-hand accounts of military service before these stories were lost forever. Camilla spent the entire day moving through the festival, speaking with visitors, veterans, and volunteers. She was deeply gratified to see how the memorial had inspired such meaningful community engagement with history and remembrance. As the first day of the festival concluded, Camilla reflected on how far the memorial project had evolved since that conversation with Harold at the veterans' home. What had begun as a simple desire to honor forgotten soldiers had grown into a comprehensive program of education, remembrance, and community building. The festival was proving that the memorial was not just a static monument, but a living center for learning and reflection that would serve Britain for generations to come. 2 years after placing the final poppy at the Corsham Memorial, Queen Camilla stood before the United Nations General Assembly in New York. She had been invited to address the international community about the memorial project and its impact on preserving historical memory and promoting peace education. The invitation came after the Corsham Memorial had received worldwide recognition for its innovative approach to war remembrance. Educational delegations from 12 countries had visited the memorial to study its design and community engagement programs. Several nations were planning similar memorials based on the Corsham model. Camilla's UN speech would be the culmination of a journey that began with her desire to honor forgotten soldiers and had evolved into an international movement for preserving military history and promoting peace through education. Standing at the podium in the famous Assembly Hall, Camilla looked out at representatives from 193 countries. Many of these nations had their own experiences with war, sacrifice, and the need to remember fallen heroes. Her speech would resonate with universal themes while sharing Britain's specific approach to honoring military sacrifice. Distinguished delegates, Camilla began, her voice clear and confident. I am here today to tell you about a memorial that has taught us how remembering the past can build a more peaceful future. The story begins not with governments or grand policies, but with an elderly veteran who simply wanted his brother to be remembered. Camilla told the assembly about Harold, the veteran whose story had inspired the memorial project. She explained how his desire for a place to honor his fallen brother had led to creating a memorial that now served thousands of families and educated countless young people about the costs of war and the value of peace. She described the memorial's design and the careful research that had gone into identifying soldiers who had no graves or monuments. The audience listened intently as she explained how communities could work together to preserve historical memory and create spaces for healing and education. The memorial has become more than stone and names, Camilla continued. It has become a living classroom where children learn about courage and sacrifice, where families find peace and connection, and where communities unite around shared values of freedom and service. Camilla shared statistics that demonstrated the memorial's impact. Over 50,000 people had visited in 2 years. More than 200 school groups had participated in educational programs. 12 other countries had begun planning similar memorials. The annual festival had grown to attract visitors from around the world. But beyond the numbers, Camilla emphasized the personal stories that showed the memorial's true significance. She told the assembly about Dorothy Fletcher, who finally had a place to talk to her husband after 76 years of separation. She described George Davies, who fulfilled his promise to honor his brother's heroic sacrifice. These stories remind us that behind every war memorial are individual human beings who loved, hoped, and dreamed before their lives were cut short, Camilla explained. When we honor them properly, we not only serve their memory, but inspire future generations to choose peace over conflict. Camilla's speech included specific recommendations for other nations wanting to create similar memorials and educational programs. She emphasized the importance of community involvement, educational components, and ongoing programming that kept memorials active and relevant. She also announced a new international initiative that had grown out of the Corsham project. The British government, working with educational organizations, was creating a global network of war memorials that would share resources, educational materials, and best practices for preserving military history. War is a universal human experience, but so is our capacity for remembrance, learning, and choosing peace, Camilla told the assembly. By working together to honor our fallen heroes, we can build a world where their sacrifices lead not to more conflict, but to greater understanding and lasting peace. The response to Camilla's UN speech was overwhelmingly positive. Delegates from dozens of countries approached her after the speech to discuss adapting the Corsham model for their own war memorials. The speech was broadcast internationally and sparked renewed interest in creative approaches to war remembrance. Following the UN speech, Camilla embarked on a world tour to visit existing war memorials and meet with veterans organizations in different countries. The tour allowed her to share the Corsham experience while learning from memorial projects in other cultures and nations. Her first stop was France, where she visited the World War I battlefields and memorials that had inspired the original poppy symbolism. French veterans organizations had studied the Corsham model and were planning a similar memorial for French soldiers who died without proper graves. In Belgium, Camilla met with European Union officials who were developing a continent-wide program for preserving World War II history. They wanted to use the Corsham educational model as the foundation for a European network of interactive war memorials. Her visit to Germany was particularly meaningful because it demonstrated how former enemies could work together to honor all victims of war while promoting peace and reconciliation. German officials had invited Camilla to help design a memorial that would honor both German and Allied soldiers, emphasizing shared humanity rather than national divisions. In Poland, Camilla visited Holocaust memorials and met with survivors who appreciated the Corsham model's emphasis on personal stories and family connections. They suggested creating similar memorials for Holocaust victims who had no graves or family to remember them. Each country Camilla visited brought unique perspectives to war remembrance, but all shared common themes of honoring sacrifice, educating young people, and building peace through understanding history. The Corsham model was adaptable to different cultures while maintaining its core principles. The Asian portion of Camilla's tour included visits to Japan, South Korea, and Australia. In Japan, she met with Hiroshima peace activists who were interested in the Corsham model's educational components. They wanted to create memorials that would teach young people about the consequences of war without promoting hatred between former enemies. In Australia, Camilla visited Anzac memorials and met with veterans of more recent conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Australian veterans appreciated the Corsham model's emphasis on individual stories and its recognition that war trauma affects families for generations. Throughout her world tour, Camilla collected ideas and stories that would enhance the ongoing development of the Corsham Memorial and its educational programs. She learned about different cultural approaches to honoring the dead and discovered innovative educational techniques being used at memorials around the world. When she returned to Britain, Camilla brought plans for expanding the Corsham Memorial's international connections. She arranged for student exchange programs that would allow young people from different countries to visit the memorial and share their own cultural approaches to remembrance. She also established the Corsham Memorial Foundation, an international organization dedicated to supporting war memorials and peace education programs worldwide. The foundation would provide grants, educational materials, and technical assistance to communities wanting to create or improve their own memorial projects. The Foundation's first major project was creating a digital archive that would connect war memorials around the world. The archive would allow families to search for relatives across multiple countries and memorials, helping reunite families with information about loved ones who died far from home. On the third anniversary of placing the final poppy, Camilla returned to Corsham for a special ceremony recognizing the memorial's international impact. Representatives from 15 countries attended the ceremony, along with veterans, students, and local residents who had supported the project from its beginning. The ceremony included the unveiling of a new addition to the memorial, a section dedicated to international cooperation in remembrance and peace education. This section displayed flags from all countries that had adopted elements of the Corsham model for their own memorial projects. Harold, the elderly veteran whose story had inspired the original memorial, was invited to speak at the anniversary ceremony. At 97 years old, he had lived to see his simple desire to honor his brother grow into an international movement for peace education. "I never imagined that wanting to remember my brother would lead to something this big," Harold said, his voice still strong despite his age. "But I'm grateful that his memory, and the memory of all our fallen heroes, is inspiring people around the world to choose peace." Camilla's remarks at the anniversary ceremony focused on the memorial's continuing evolution and its future potential. She announced plans for a permanent international conference center adjacent to the memorial, where educators, veterans, and peace activists could meet regularly to develop new approaches to remembrance and peace education. She also revealed that several Nobel Peace Prize winners had agreed to serve on the memorial's International Advisory Board, bringing global expertise to its educational and peace-building mission. The anniversary ceremony concluded with a remarkable moment that symbolized the memorial's international reach. Veterans from 12 different countries placed poppies together at the memorial, representing the shared sacrifice of all nations that fought for freedom during World War II. As the ceremony ended, Camilla reflected on the journey from that first conversation with Harold to this international recognition of the memorial's impact. The project had exceeded every expectation and dream she had when she first conceived the idea of honoring forgotten soldiers. The memorial had become a model for how communities could work together to preserve history, honor sacrifice, and build peace through education. It had connected families with lost relatives, inspired young people to learn about their history, and created international cooperation around shared values of freedom and remembrance. Most importantly, the memorial had fulfilled its original purpose, ensuring that brave men and women who gave their lives for freedom would never be forgotten. Their names would remain on the memorial wall forever, and their stories would continue inspiring future generations to value peace and be willing to serve others. Standing in the memorial gardens, as the international visitors departed, Camilla looked at the thousands of names on the memorial wall and the continuing stream of visitors who came to honor them. The final poppy she had placed 3 years earlier had indeed marked a completion, but it had also marked a beginning. The memorial would continue growing, learning, and serving as new generations discovered its treasures and found inspiration in the stories of courage and sacrifice preserved within its walls. Queen Camilla had created something that would serve humanity for generations, ensuring that the ultimate sacrifice of war heroes would forever inspire the pursuit of peace.